Welcome to Wednesday Reflections. I'm your host, Aaliyah, and today I want to begin by giving life updates. So, today in particular has been crazy. It is Wednesday, April 29th, and y'all, when I say this week is crazy, it's been crazy. So, starting off, I was supposed to go to work Monday and Tuesday, but Monday I ended up just not feeling the best in my body, like physically. I kept trying to push and push and push, trying to make it out the door. And it was like every single time I kept trying to push to go to work or push to get out of the door, it was like my body would get worse, or like my intestines and stuff like that was just hurting and cramping. So that was happening. And I was like, you know what? It's just not meant. And so I had to call off. And then the same thing happened on Tuesday, to where each time I was trying to get to work, it just was not happening. And sometimes this happens with my monthlies and things like that, because it's just very painful. And I'm not entirely sure as to why. But I just wish these things would go away, because sometimes it's like almost every month, and I don't know. I just want to be able to still go about my regular routine and not have this get in the way. And then fast forward to today, I text my coworkers and my manager, and I'm just like, hey, I'll be able to come in today. And as soon as I'm on my way, the car breaks down. So maybe God is trying to prevent me from something. I'm not sure. I'm placing that in God's hands, but dang, like it's 3 days in a row where I'm just unable to make it to work. And so now I'm at the point where I don't even want to text them that, hey, I'm going to be in tomorrow or whatever, because I really don't know. But I'm trying to do everything in my power. I'm trying to show up. I'm trying to be a team player. But like I said, it just hasn't been working. So that's the life update. My car's at the repair shop being worked on, and yeah, another huge expense. But I'm going to go ahead and segue into the topic, which is marriage. I want to talk about what we hear a lot of times and we see on social media with marriage, and a lot of times people will say marriage is hard. Now, sometimes people will be able to answer the why, but I feel like sometimes we don't hear the why. And that's what I want to discuss today. So the examples that I'm going to be giving, they're not my own examples. They're actually things that I've seen either in other people's marriage, what I've experienced, and just what I've heard and what I've seen. So I'm giving everybody's experience, and I'm coming here today to answer the why. So first off, I want to start off by saying the why to start is because there are two people from different backgrounds trying to come together and to become one, right? And you're trying to merge. I'm going to be discussing marriage, but I'm also going to be discussing the marriage of Christian marriages, and biblical marriages in a sense. But I just want to say, if you are Christian and you believe in Jesus and that's what you're centering around and your marriage and things like that, that's what I can kind of speak on. So marriage in those types of ways. So going back into the two people from different backgrounds, because y'all have two entirely different childhoods, even if you're saying, oh yeah, we're similar because we grew up on the same entertainments, y'all did not grow up in the same exact household. Discipline may have looked different from the both of you. Your parents may have looked different. One of you have probably grown up with two parents in the household. One of you have probably grown up with only one. So you probably grown up with a single mother or a single father. Or you grew up with a mom and dad, but they didn't have the healthiest relationship. And so everything plays a part. And when those two people come together, it can either be, it's going to be a testimony regardless, right? If you're having a Christian marriage, your union is a ministry. And if it's done correctly, it can be a beautiful union and a beautiful ministry that reaches out and touches people and changes lives and all those things. But regardless of which, in these negative ways, everything is going to affect you. So, for example, for somebody who is growing up in a single parent household, there's going to be an expectation of what marriage means for that individual. Marriage can mean for the individual growing up in a single parent household that this is it, this needs to be solid. I don't want to do, divorce. I want us to be healthy. I want us to be on one accord. They're going to want to, most times, not repeat the cycle of what they grew up in, right? Usually people don't want to repeat the cycles of what they grew up in these unhealthy environments, unless you're just toxic or you haven't healed. I've been hearing something from people lately about the theme of whoopings and that type of discipline. And I've heard the belief in some people's minds of, oh, I'm going to whoop my kids because my parents whooped me, so I'm going to whoop them. And it's kind of like a power dynamic. And it's kind of sick because, to be honest with you, in my own personal belief, I feel like whoopings are pointless. It's meaningless, and it creates a lot of people-pleasing people in the world. And they have to then realize when they become an adults that they're no longer in a child's place, that they're able to speak up, speak their minds and stuff like that. But when you are in a household to where when you spoke your mind, it resulted in a whooping, what do you think is the long-term effect of that? And also with whoopings, why I don't really agree. And some people will say, okay, there's a time and a place, and maybe. But for me, a whooping doesn't make sense because it doesn't solve anything. And it shows me that the person doing that punishment does not have self-control, and that they are putting on physical harm instead of being able to have a conversation. But I will say every child is different. I will say that every child is different. Some kids may need whoopings, who knows? Me personally, I felt as though I never needed a whooping. I felt like we could have had a conversation and I would have been able to move accordingly from there, right? But let's say, going back onto the subject, let's say somebody who's grown up with a two-parent household, but the relationship dynamic wasn't healthy. So what do you think that person does when they grow up and they get married, right? Now, they can acknowledge what was not right, but also they may have not done the work. Or they can think that they're healed and they may not be. And healing is something that is continual. I don't feel like anybody ever really arrives to a place of 100% complete healedness. Now, if I'm wrong, you can comment down. But usually, you repeat what you've seen and you repeat what you've heard. And unless you are actively working nonstop 24/7 to go against what you've seen and what you've heard, to not repeat the cycle and continue that, you're going to do it. Why? Because that's something that you've seen, and that is what is programmed into you and into your psyche. So that's what I will say. Why marriage is hard is because you guys see two different ways of doing things, and you are kind of having a power struggle between the two of what's going to be the right way and the best way to go about things in everything. And so you have to always come to a solution, and you have to always come to a compromise, right? And some people may think that compromise is settling, and to an extent it is. And some people don't know actually how to compromise. And that was something that I had to learn, right? So compromise is when you both are waiting to get what you want in a sense. It's a sacrifice on both ends to an extent, but you are both going to get the thing that you're wanting. That is true compromise. An example can be, hey, I want a nice house, right? but my partner may not think that we can financially afford it at that moment in time. So the compromise would be, hey, we can't get this house right now. Let's get our finances together. Let's strike a plan. And in a year or two, we'll get to this house. That is compromise. What some people may think is compromise is, hey, we can't afford that house. So we're just not going to get it. And then the person that wants the house says, okay, I understand. Now, is that compromise or is that settling? That's settling. But a lot of times people in relationships will think that that's what compromise is, and that's just what it is, and leave it at that. But it's not. That's not real compromise, because only one of you is really getting what you want instead of the both of you. One person's issue was financial and the other person wants the house. So you come together and compromise on, this is the timeline. It's not going to be immediate, but we will get there. That's compromise. So that's one, right? Another reason why some marriages may be hard is because you have love bombers. Love bombers are people that before you got married, and I'm going to use the men in this instance because I don't really hear or see too much of women being love bombers. Not to say that they don't exist, I just don't hear much about it. But let's say, for example, a man's the love bomber and he's, giving a woman flowers consistently. He's giving her chocolates, money, shopping sprees, clothes, taking her out, wine and dining consistently, and showing up as this man. And the woman in this case is, obviously thinking nothing of it. She doesn't realize that it's love bombing, because to her, she can think, yes, finally, this is the way that I'm supposed to be treated. And that's why it can be hard for those individuals to recognize the love bombing, because it really just comes across as, well, this is how I'm supposed to be treated. You should do these things for me, which, don't get me wrong, they should, but usually those are signs of a love bomber. So with that being said, when love bombers get you and you've committed to them, everything stops. And sometimes love bombers can continue into marriage. So let's say you marry this love bomber. They immediately stop. They don't do the things that they were doing before. They start to think as if they are a single person. You are looking for the connection that you thought you had, and they are pushing you away. Imagine what that does. That can be another reason why marriage is hard, because your expectation was that this was going to continue. But the reality is, it was all a game. It was for show. And some people don't even realize that that's what's happened to them, but that is love bombing. Another example is what I've kind of already hit on, but it's the still behaving as if single, making decisions on your own, not considering the person. A lot of things in marriage is all about intentionality. So you're not going to always get it right. You may offend your partner at times, but once again, it is about intention. Is your intention to harm them when you made certain choices? Because that would be different, right? But if you made decisions and choices for the betterment of your relationship, and it just so happens to offend the person, then obviously you need to apologize, but also try to explain what it is that your thought pattern was. But then the both of you guys come and say what's going to be different in the future as far as you making decisions on your own. So that can be an example of being single. Another example can be, okay, you don't make our marriage and your partner a priority. You make everything else a priority, whether that's your career, your friends, your family, and then your partner is just last, right? Me personally, the only thing that I feel as though should be above your spouse is God. So if it's not God, if you ain't in here praying, you're not reading your Bible, you're not spending time in the Word and all these different things, you're not worshiping, then it should be me. And it's not that I have to take up all your time, but I do need to be a priority. You do need to prioritize spending time together. So that's another thing. which brings me to expectations versus reality. So some people have the expectation that, hey, every single day we're going to spend X amount of time together and we're just going to be like best friends, and it's going to be like a sleepover type of feeling, and we're going to watch movies, we're going to play games, and it's just going to be this never ending sleepover in a sense, which can be nice. But for some people, usually men, right, that's not going to be something that's true. That's not going to be something that they are going to want to do. Why? Because they're thinking about building the future and whatever it is that you said that you wanted or what you guys wanted together. So they're thinking about finances usually. They're thinking about work. They're thinking about schedule and all these different things, right? Some people with the expectations versus reality, maybe they're not even thinking about finances. Maybe they're not even thinking about the future. They can just be, if they're not ambitious, they can spend time with their friends where they want to game, or they want to, I don't know, just do things with their friends so they can be in a season of immaturity, and that's going to hurt the person with the expectation that you were going to spend a lot of time together. So it's also in love languages, right? That's another reason why marriage can be hard, is because you both have two different love languages, and the way that you give love may not be how your partner can receive it, and vice versa. And then the way that you need love may be in a way that your partner is not able to give to you or is not willing. So if your love language is quality time and the type of love language that they give is acts of service, even though what they're doing is nice, your cup is not going to be filled. So, and I will say to that, you can't look for your partner to complete you and make you a whole person. You should be a whole person on your own. You should know ways of how to fill your cup. So even if you have to take the time to make a list of what fills my cup, and for myself, I can say, hey, I like to sing karaoke. That fills my cup. I love playing cards. I love spending time with my husband. I love spending time with my mom and my family. Just different things like that. So whether you need to make a list so that you can go out of your own way to get your cup filled, and this is not to give husbands or your spouse, because I'm not just attacking husbands, but your spouse in general, this is not to give them a pass, because they do need to be showing up to also help in filling your cup and actually being there and being a partner, a good one at that. But let's keep in mind that we're not overdoing it and we're not putting too much onto them to fill our cups, because that's not fair. So yeah, it's just expectations versus reality of different things. Do they want you to be, like their father? Do they want you to be like their mother? Are they trying to psychologically repeat the environment that they grew up in? And I will say, if that was not a healthy environment, I would hope that they don't want to repeat that, or they can, bring that to the surface and make it clear that that's what they're doing, and then change and move from there. But I will say, a piece of advice with marriage, or if that's something that you're looking to do, or if that's something that you're already in, you guys have to discuss, how do you guys deal with disappointment? Because you're going to be disappointed in something, whether it's something small, something big. Disappointment is bound to happen. How do you deal with it? Do you, lash out? Do you get angry? Do you not want to be touched? Do you not want to hang out with your spouse once you are disappointment and things like that? Do you disconnect? Do you go and distance yourself? Do you hop on the game, or do you go and distance yourself and you go out? What is it that you do to deal with that disappointment? Because there's going to be a lot of things, and that's, like I said, it's going to be a constant. Whether it's something that your partner's doing or it's just life in general, you do have to pinpoint how you deal with it, and then how would you like, in a healthy way, what's going to be productive, and how do you go about that? And then also, there needs to be grace given on both sides. So there's going to be stupid things that both of y'all do. There's going to be attitudes. There's going to be feelings and everything like that. You are not going to always get it right 100% of the time. And you guys are both going to have to extend the grace. You may have to just let them be for that day. You know what I mean? It's not to say to, sit up and be disrespected, but just keep in mind that you guys are both human. You are not perfect. And so we can say that all day long until it actually happens and until it's in your face, right? And then we're expecting for somebody to be perfect, or we're expecting for somebody to just know something. But keep in mind, common sense ain't as common. And the common sense that you have is just your common sense based off of your life experience. But somebody else, right, may not have had that same common sense or life experience. So they don't know, quote unquote, common sense. So that goes back into the two people from different backgrounds trying to come together to be one. So keep in mind that what you guys are doing is going to be a new thing. There has never been a you on this earth before, and there has never been a them on this earth before. So trying to come together and create this new thing, y'all may both feel as though you're quote unquote dying. And to an extent you are, right? Because you have to come and become a new thing together. And going back into the Christ type of marriage, keep in mind that it's not just you two. There's also Christ in the center of that. So it's really the three of you. Okay? So keep that in mind. Continue to pray over each other, because there's going to be a lot of spiritual attacks, because the devil does not like marriage. So he does everything in his power to destroy it, to mess up the peace, to keep coming at you. And if you are the stronger of the two spiritually, just know that one of the ways, if the devil can't get you nowhere else, he's going to use your partner to try to come against you. So keep that in mind as well. But also stand in your authority that God has given you to call that spirit out and to call that spirit to flee, right? So I will say that on the spiritual sides of things. There was something else that I was going to say. I'm trying to see if I can remember. But yeah, that's what I will say is there's a lot of grace that needs to be given. There's a lot of authority that you're going to have to walk in. And yeah, that's really the advice that I can give as far as marriage and my perspective of why marriage would be hard. Now, there's other things. Oh, I just remembered. But I will say this too, because I also see this on the media and, women. If you're going to be, trying to do a Christian marriage or so have you, I will say that in the Bible, if it's going to be a thing of infidelity in your marriage, you do not have to stay married. That is one of the things that Jesus is okay with getting a divorce about and fleeing yourself, right? As a woman. I see so many times where women try to stay after infidelity and they want to say or use the excuse of God or Jesus and or divorce breaks God's heart and things like that. But I do want to put it out there, because when I'm talking about hard times and why marriage is hard and all those different things, I want to make it very clear, I am never talking about infidelity. If somebody cheats, leave. And don't try to use the Bible or Jesus as an excuse as to why you're still there. Just say that you're there because you want to be there, but don't bring God into that, because God ain't got nothing to do with that. But that's my 2 cents. Thank you for spending time with me, and until next time, y'all take care of yourself.